Think back to when you were 10 years old. A single summer felt endless. The days stretched out, slow and wide, like they would never run out. Now think about last year. For a lot of people, it went by in a blur, gone almost before it started. The clock never changed. A year is still a year. So why does time feel like it is speeding up as we get older? This video is about that strange feeling and about how we might slow it back down. So let's start with how real this actually is. In 2005, two scientists named Marc Wittmann and Sandra Lehnhoff asked nearly 500 people, aged 14 to 94, a simple question. How fast is time passing right now, and how fast did the last 10 years go? The answer was revealing. When it came to this exact moment, young and old felt time about the same. But looking back over 10 years, the older people felt it had raced by. The feeling of a vanishing decade grew stronger with age. But we should be careful here, because the effect was real, but modest. Age explained only a small slice of the difference. So this is not some hard law where every year literally ticks faster. It is a feeling, built by the mind when it looks back. And to understand it, we have to ask how the brain measures the past in the first place. So here is the key idea. Your brain does not measure a past stretch of time with a clock. It measures it by how much it's stored. A period packed with new things feels long in memory. A period of pure routine feels short. And this simple rule explains almost everything about the speeding clock. And the idea is old. In 1890, a thinker named William James wrote about it in his famous psychology book. He said that childhood feels long because it is full of firsts. Your first day of school, your first bicycle, your first time at the ocean. Each one is new, so each one gets written down in rich detail. But as we age, the firsts run out. We drive the same road, do the same job, see the same walls. And the brain, with little new to store, lets those years collapse together. But is this just a nice theory, or can you actually test it? In 1969, a researcher named Robert Ornstein put it to the test. He gave people the same amount of time, filled with different things. Some heard a simple, tidy pattern of sounds. Others heard a messy, random one that was hard to make sense of. Afterward, he asked how long it had lasted. The people who heard the messy, information-rich version felt it had gone on much longer, up to about a third longer than the tidy one, for the exact same clock time. Which means the brain really does run on stored information, not on minutes. When there is more to take in, more to sort, more to remember, the period swells in your memory. When it is neat and predictable, the brain files it away small. Your past is measured in density, not in hours. And Ornstein saw this shift happen in real time. When people learned to recognize a messy pattern and make sense of it, two things fell together at once. Their sense of how long it lasted shrank, and the number of words they needed to describe it dropped, from around 64 down to about 22. Less to store meant less remembered time. The clock had not moved. The brain had simply learned to pack it smaller. So what makes a single moment dense? The answer is novelty. In 2004, a scientist named Peter Tse ran a clever test. He showed people a stream of identical shapes, one after another, each on screen for the same brief instant. Then, without warning, a different shape appeared. And even though that oddball shape stayed on screen for exactly the same time as the others, people felt it lasted longer. The surprise made the brain pay sharp attention, and that attention stretched the moment. But the most dramatic version of this shows up in fear. In 2007, a scientist named David Eagleman wanted to know if time truly slows down in a terrifying moment. So he dropped volunteers backward off a tower, more than 100 feet, into a safety net. The fall itself lasted about 2.5 seconds. He strapped a special fast-flashing watch to their wrists to test one thing: could they actually see faster during the fall? But they could not. The watch proved their eyes were not working in slow motion. But when he asked them afterward how long the fall had lasted, they overestimated their own fall by about a third. So the slowing was not happening live, it was happening in memory. Their terrified brains had recorded the fall in such dense detail that, looking back, it felt stretched. Fear did not slow time. It thickened the memory of it. So the whole picture comes together. A rich, novel, attention-grabbing stretch of life gets stored in high detail and feels long when you look back. A safe, repeated stretch gets stored thin and vanishes. Now hold that idea up against how our ancestors lived. Because their world was the opposite of routine. In 2014, a researcher named Polly Wiesner studied the Juhohansi people, who still live much as humans did long ago. She recorded their conversations and found something striking. In the daytime, they talked about ordinary things, complaints, gossip, who had what. But at night, around the fire, it transformed. About 8 in 10 of their night conversations were stories, tales of people, spirits, distant places, and the past. Which means even their nights were not empty time. They were filling the dark with vivid, imagined worlds. Their days held real risk and real novelty. Their nights held rich stories. For a mind that measures time in stored experience, a year like that would have felt enormous, dense with things worth keeping. And there may be a second, quieter reason the years speed up, buried in the body itself. In 2019, a scientist named Adrian Bayesian offered a physical theory. He argued that as we age, the brain takes in mental images more slowly. Our eyes flick less often. The signals travel longer paths through a bigger, older brain. So we capture fewer fresh mental snapshots per second than a child does. And with fewer snapshots to look back on, a day feels thinner and the year feels quicker. It is only a theory, not a proven cause, but it fits the same pattern. Fewer things stored, faster the time seems to fly. So then we built a different world. We built safety, comfort, and routine. The same commute, the same desk, the same screen, the same meals. We removed the danger, which is a gift, but we also removed the novelty. And in 2003, a modern researcher named Dalia Avni-Babad found the cost of that. Routine periods feel shorter and more compressed in memory than varied ones. Which means a comfortable, predictable year gives the brain almost nothing to store. So when you look back on it, there is very little there. A few scattered moments float in a sea of sameness, and the whole year feels like it barely happened. The safety we built quietly eats our sense of time. But this points straight at the way out. You cannot make the clock slow down. What you can change is how much your brain decides to keep. And the brain keeps what is new. So if you want your years to feel full again, you have to feed it firsts. Go to a place you have never been. Learn a skill that makes you clumsy again. Take the road you never take. Because every genuinely new experience forces the brain to pay attention and write it down in detail. And detail is what makes a stretch of life feel long when you look back. You are not trying to add hours to your years. You are trying to add memories to them. So the next time a year seems to vanish behind you, remember what actually happened. You did not lose the time. Your brain simply decided most of it was not worth keeping. And the quiet power to change that is still yours, hiding in the next new thing you are brave enough to try.